This episode is brought to you by Modal Electronics, who enable you to play and perform powerful sound with their incredible synthesizers. You can enjoy vibrant wavetable patches with the Argon 8 series, or you can produce with state-of-the-art analog-style synth textures with the Cobalt 8 series. To check out Modal Electronics' incredible array of synthesizers, go to modalelectronics.com. Modal Electronics. Dare to sound different.
Well, I mean, I was always a fan of music, I guess, just because my parents listened to it all the time. It was always playing in the house. We were in the car a lot as kids, so music was always playing. They were always singing. I tell people all the time, if you've ever seen that movie National Lampoon's Vacation, where they're going around the corner and the parents are singing at the top of their lungs and the kids are just like, that was me and my brother in the back seat. And so yeah, so that kind of, was my intro to it all, or just at least, being, just having it around me all the time. And then, as you start to get in, my brother was 5 years older than me, and I would just listen to what he listened to. And then my friends, you started to like songs on the radio back then. But really what bit me is actually, it used to be sort of this cool story. And now it's almost like, because of the song that I'm going to say, it's almost kind of cheesy, so to speak. And it's really weird because the song has had such an insane run. But a kid brought his Walkman to school and let me hear Crazy Train by Ozzy for the first time. And this is when Ozzy was still the devil, I mean, this is, early 80s and, mid 80s ish. And I was just like, what is this that I'm listening to? Like, it's just so, like, his voice is so crazy, and like the music and this guitar, and I just knew instantly that that music was going to be something more to me than what it had been up until that particular day. And, that's literally when I asked my parents for a drum set for Christmas, and I went out and I bought a Motley Crue record that day, I got two Ozzy records that day, and still records, by the way, back then. I wish I still had them, because now everybody's into vinyl.
Yeah,
but that's really the day that I knew. I mean, I literally remember it like it was yesterday, where I was standing in the classroom and everything. And it's cool that music and smells are kind of the only two things that can really do that. And smells aren't necessarily as good as music. Music, I can hear one song in it and I can literally feel, and honestly, like, all of your senses come back to like this day in high school where I was by the pool, and, my friends were over, and, yada, yada. So it's cool how music can do that, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely can. And I've just read Ozzy's. Have you read Ozzy Osbourne's book? He's got an autobiography a few years ago. I would highly recommend it. As being a bit of a junkie for rock autobiographies, but his was so funny. So many unbelievably crazy stories, just every single page.
And you just know that they're all true too. It's like, I think there's a lot of those bands, and I'm a fan of a lot of them, but I think Motley Crue, for example, between all of them, they've got 4 or 5 books out. I feel like a lot of it is sort of tall tales and embellishments or whatever. Not that they weren't crazy, I'm sure that they were, but I mean, like with Led Zeppelin, how many fish can you put inside a woman? But there's just something about Ozzy where you're just like, man, I believe it.
You can tell. I mean, you can tell that he's done some serious damage to himself. From his speech impediment and stuff like that. But he's such a likable guy. He seems to have such a good heart, and then he's just crazy on top of it. I mean, and that voice as well. And he's got he's got that appreciation for melodies, despite all the heaviness. You can tell that he's a big Beatles fan just from those melodies.
For sure. Yeah, and I did read a lot. I mean, I read a lot about him as a kid, and I do know how much the Beatles meant to him. So you definitely hear that influence for sure.
Yeah, and I think that kind of he wasn't like one of those people who was like insanely knowledgeable about music or anything like that. Like, and he's so modest. Like the way he said that the only reason why he got into Black Sabbath was because he owned a PA system.
Yeah.
There's nothing to do with his voice. I mean, that kind of like ordinary bloke kind of attitude to him is just super endearing. But so that was the kind of record that one of the records that really changed things for you. How did you move forward and decide to take music more seriously? How did you learn, as it were?
Yeah, I mean, so then it just became about more of that, like this 80s hair metal thing, which I know wasn't the biggest of music. Like a lot of the bands that we had here weren't that huge over in the UK, but I mean, obviously you guys had, Def Leppard from there, and there a lot of some of them are doing well over there now, but back then it was interesting. It seems like you guys were shipping more bands over here than we were at the time. But yeah, I just embraced myself in that kind of music, in that Sunset Strip hair metal. And it makes a lot of sense, really, because when I go back and listen to those songs now, I just hear them as punk rock songs with guitar solos and singers that sing high. I mean, they really are. I mean, lyrically and just the simplicity of the arrangements. If you take out, the insane guitar solos and stuff, they're all pretty simple punk rock songs. And it's one of the things that I really like about country music too, is, I grew up listening to country music. And if you listen to country music still, it's very, very simple punk rock songs. They really are. So, but yeah, I got a drum set. I started playing, basically just mimicking Tommy Lee and trying to be, trying to just absorb myself in that kind of music. And then I was just in bands as a kid, really all the way up until Bowling for Soup. I was never not in a band. And I went from playing that kind of music to really, really heavy stuff like Obituary and Slayer and just like that kind of stuff. And it was at that point where it was so hard to find a singer, but everybody either played drums or bass. So I was just like, well, I'll just sing till we find somebody, and kind of never went back behind the drums. I just, I enjoyed being out front, and that's just sort of where I landed. And then a kid moved to Wichita Falls, where I was from, as I was graduating from high school, and he let me hear the Descendants for the first time, Green Day for the first time, Propaganda, Bad Religion. And I was just like, what am I listening to? I mean, this is like heavy and fast, but the singers are actually singing. And they're like, well, not Propaganda or Bad Religion, but, Descendants and Green Day and Screeching Weasel and all these bands where I'm just like, oh my God, they're singing about like farts and girls and, and things that I know about. And at that point, there was no looking back. I was just hooked. And it was, that would be the beginnings of me starting to, I started another band for a couple of years, and then 94 Bowling for Soup came right off of just, all of that just mixed together.
And when did you start writing songs? Because I mean, obviously there's the sort of heavy like rock and roll element to your music, to Bowling for Soup, but then there's also such great melodies running through all of it, like just serious melodies. Some of the big singles, those are some of the great kind of pop punk melodies of all time, I'd say.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, I tried to start writing in the metal days, but honestly, it just wasn't something. I didn't play guitar yet. So a couple of years before Bowling for Soup is when I started the band that would be like my first punk band, and I played guitar and sang. I was just learning, and that's when I started writing. And the cool thing is that I had really embraced myself in the Descendants, and then the band that they had become called All. And the way that their songs were structured, there weren't a lot of rules. So it sort of went against everything that I'd learned from the Eagles or, music growing up. And so it really, when I started writing songs, I didn't really know how to play, and I didn't really know the rules to songwriting. And I just had to just slug it out and learn it. And so I think that's where a lot of that comes from, is just, just really, again, like, I can do something sometimes on a song. And if you're a music theory guy, you can go, well, that doesn't make any sense. You shouldn't go to this or this or this. And I'll go, well, it sounds fine, so I'm leaving it in. And one of the good things about yeah. One of the good things about not being educated is that you do what works, And so yeah,
it's actually really irritating when people do that, isn't it? When it's like a pop context, and it's just like, well, it sounds good to me, and I've listened to pop tunes, and I don't care about music theory.
Right? Yeah. It's honestly, I get jealous because I wish I had that knowledge and that ability, but my friends, like, some of my better friends in the world are these music theory crazy nuts. And they sometimes are like, I wish I had more of your brain, because I tend to lock myself in these little areas of like, well, I can't do this because this doesn't work, and yada, yada. So it's fun when those two things come together. My best friend Linus and I, write a lot of stuff for Bowling for Soup and produce a lot of things together. And it's a very nice combination of like him being very just, theory and like, this is supposed to be like this and this, and then me just being like, what about this insanity that we're gonna, and okay, we'll try it, but yeah, songwriting, and again, I think growing up listening to so much country with my parents and things like that, those songs are stories. And I think therein lies lyrically where Bowling for Soup lands. Most of our songs have a beginning and an end, or at least there's a vision of a story in your head. And that's just sort of the way that I've always enjoyed music. And so I think that's why it comes out that way.
For sure. And so in terms of like, actually needing to what extent did you need to know theory? Obviously you're saying that you weren't like, some kind of like crazy like expert when it comes to theory, but to what extent, like when you picked up the guitar for the first time, how old were you, and how did you learn? Like, did you learn to read? Did you do tab? Did you do chords, or did you just dive in and start playing along to tunes?
Well, I was really lucky because, like I said, I played drums first, and so I played drums in school, and with like playing percussion, I at least knew the notes on the piano. And so I knew what notes were. I knew at least that much theory. I, to this day, can't tell you what key a song that I'm playing is in. Like, even if I wrote it, like if somebody will look at me like, hey, what key is this in? I have no idea. I really don't. And I often make fun of myself. Gary, my drummer, was just talking about this the other day. It's like, you make fun of yourself for not knowing how to play the guitar, but you do what you do better than pretty much anybody, that there is. Like, it's like, often the case. As far as like what Bowling for Soup is, like, I'm really good at that, but that's kind of it. That's pretty much all I knew. I mean, I learned chords. I learned how to do power chords, which, is if you know guitar, it's just simply a way of putting your fingers on the fretboard, and no matter where you are, it works. And so you just have to find the notes that sound good together. And that's literally all I could do. And then I would just pick out these melodies in my head, like, and I just play it, and it sounded good. And so, and then, I started to learn, like my open chords, G, C, and D, and things like that. And so really my knowledge that's kind of it. Like, I don't really know in what key a C and an A minor can work together. I just know that if I hear it and it doesn't sound good, then I do a different note,
Yeah. No, because a lot of people who are trying to learn and stuff and want to start bands, like a lot of people can get inside their own heads and think, when actually sometimes it's good to get started. So I just want to give like an example of something. So say there was like, I don't know, like a 13th chord or something like that. Would you know, like off the top of your head, right, this is like a 13th? No.
And
if you go, for this style of music.
If you go like, okay, this is like a 2, 5, 3, 7, blah blah blah, like people talk, I have no idea what that means. If you say all right, this is just like A A, B minor, D, or whatever, and it's sort of like a blues arrangement, then I sort of know what you're going to do. But once I hear you play it once, then I sort of know where you're going to go all the time. That's one of the cool things that comes from just playing and playing and playing and learning other people's songs for acoustic gigs and things like that is, I used to watch Eric back in the day, and even like when I would be showing him a song that I just wrote, I'd start it and he would just start playing along, and I'd be like, God damn it, how do you do that? And he's like, you can do that. And I was like, I actually can't do that. Well, one day you can just do it, and it's awesome because it's like I can, my wife loves it. I'll just turn on she's like, do you know this song? And I just turn it on or whatever. And by the second chord, I'm like, oh, okay. And, we'll do this. But here's the thing. Most of the time, my brain is putting my fingers where they go. And I'm not sitting there. I'm definitely not sitting there going, oh, well, this is the key of blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So
you're just kind of figuring it out by ear.
You said something, that, and I think that's really a really wise advice. A lot of people will come up to me like, can you read music? And it's like, well, no, I mean, I can't. I mean, like, and you don't need to know how to read music. You really don't. I mean, there's people that can sit in front of a piano and not know one freaking note on the paper, but can sit there and just go to town on the piano. So, I can read music. I can't sight read music. So in other words, if you set me down with a piece of piano music, I could go through there and tell you like what all the notes are and play them for you as I go, but I wouldn't sit there and it sound like a song as I'm playing it.
Yeah. So you've got like you've got the knowledge that you need for the thing that you're trying to do. And I think a lot of people who want to play rock and roll, they kind of think, shit, like I need to learn how to play like Bach and Chopin and stuff before, and like, if you're not having a good time doing it, there's literally no point, is there? Because you will never actually get to playing those pop and rock songs that you want to.
That's my biggest advice of all of it. I mean, is if you're not having fun, don't do it. Because quite frankly, and there's the age old, what kind of advice would you give my son who wants to be a musician? And the advice is usually don't, like, I mean, obviously that's you're joking or you're being a dick. The thing is, the advice that I would always give is just enjoy what you're doing. The chances of you being able to make a living at it are better these days than it was when we first started, because there's more ways to do it and way more access to people. And, the world is really small now. But it's still not great odds. So you might as well enjoy it, while you're doing it. Because
there's no point in trying to climb that mountain if you're having a crap time doing it. Why even try?
Yeah. And have good people around you. I mean, that's the longevity of Bowling for Soup, which, is crazy. We're about to celebrate our 27th year. We'll be coming out of COVID, and we'll be almost 28. We'll be doing our first tour and then talking about our 30th anniversary. It seems insane to me. And people are always like, how do you do this? How did you manage keep it together? And like, what, it's fun. And when it stopped getting fun, we took a break, in 2013. We needed to get ourselves together mentally. We were fine as a band, but personally we were miserable, so we took a little break and now we're better than ever. And so that's my thing, is just, you got to be around people that you like too. Cause too many bands we know out there don't like one another, and it's a miserable dressing room. That's for sure.
Yeah, you hear all sorts of tales. Well, I mean, you mentioned the Eagles earlier. I read Felder's autobiography. That was an interesting.
That's an interesting read, isn't it?
Well, he's been on the podcast, and
awesome.
He couldn't resist a couple of bitchy comments about Don Henley, but I mean, all of them are geniuses in their own way.
Sure. Yeah, and they wouldn't have been the band that they were without all of them, or or bringing Joe Walsh in and all of that. There's just something though about Glenn Frey and Don Henley together, man, that is very Beatlesy to me. It's very much like, my God, did they create music? And a lot of people, a lot of your audience probably don't even know the Eagles, because I don't know how huge they were in the UK, but I mean,
they're pretty big now.
Oh, okay.
I
Because
saw them at the O2 when Glenn Fry was still alive, and it was him and Don Henley starting it
I'm
out. The
jealous.
rhythm. Good, it's a good
Yeah.
comparison, a good kind of, analogy there with the Beatles, because what they
Mm.
are one of the great songwriting teams.
For sure. And they both in their own right have their own songs and their own styles or whatever. They both went on to do great things solo wise, so there's just no doubt of just their talent and definitely, a different time, than the Beatles, but definitely, I think arguably, almost not, I don't know if anybody's as influential as the Beatles. I'll take that to the grave, but man, the influence of the Eagles goes into so many different kinds of music, into my shit, which is pop punk. And then, you obviously country, which is huge in the world, so,
Yeah,
definitely just a fantastic.
and pop. Like
Yeah.
I know it would the kind of the music snobs would probably be pretty appalled, but I'm pretty sure there's like a Boyzone or a Westlife, there's like a British boy band cover, I'm not sure which, of like Best of My Love. They are a
Oh,
bit,
I'm
they
sure.
have
Yeah,
they have their twee side as well, the Eagles, but it's
sure.
done in a very kind of authentic, heartfelt way, and the harmonies are just so great that they can carry off
Yeah,
any cheesy melody without making it seem cheesy.
for
Which
sure.
is an art, I would say, that you have definitely mastered in particularly in. I mean, "Girl, All the Bad Guys Want" isn't cheesy, but it's got that, despite it being quite heavy as well. It's got that kind of, when it gets to the pre-chorus or whatever,
Mm.
um, like it does tug on the heartstrings, as well as having that kind of, like, people would happily put that on at a party. Do you
Sure.
recall writing that and did you think this is genius? This is going to be a big hit.
It was hard because that was my very first co-write. I had, this kind of happened to me twice in a row where but this was the first time. But we had pretty much finished recording "Drunk Enough to Dance," and I thought, man, this is it. Like we have done it. And but me and Butch Walker, who produced it, had been talking lots about writing a song together, and writing a song about those bands that are mad at their dads, because that's what was big at that point, early 2000s, 2002-ish, Stained and Limp Bizkit and all of those bands were huge.
Yeah.
And so yeah, he came in with that riff and with the initial chorus idea or whatever, and I was just like, whoa. I mean, when I heard the riff, I again, this goes into education. I didn't really know what drop D was. So drop D is where you take the E string, the lowest string, and you tune that to D. And what that does is it makes everything sound, as you say, heavier. It's like if you listen to like Marilyn Manson, The Beautiful People, that's in drop D. So it made the song just have this just underlying heaviness to it. And so that was cool because I'm kind of learning that, and he's kind of showing me that we ended up writing the verses while he was recording me singing it. And man, we just had the best time. I mean, some of the biggest laughs I've ever had in my life were, I racetrack season pass or whatever. And like just how broad and simple, but just perfect that joke is, just because NASCAR racing is just such a huge population of people here in the States. And you just racetrack season pass, you just know exactly what the guy looks like, just by saying that. And so, yeah, man. But to answer the second part of your question, here's another thing about me that is, I think I might have gotten better about this over the years, but I never could hear a hit. Like if you were to ask me before Drunk Enough to Dance came out, like what the best song on the album was, I wouldn't have said "Girl, All the Bad Guys Want." There's no way. Like though I love that song, and I love to this day, it's my favorite song to play live, and I love what it's done and all that. I just didn't know. I just didn't know what it, like, to me, Emily I was like, man, Emily is the shit. Like that song's gonna be huge, and it did okay, but nothing like Girl the Bad Guys Want did, And so yeah, and even Life After Lisa, which I thought, God, that Life After Lisa's, but luckily, you at that point there were record labels involved and stuff, and they were able to go. And then my friends, who the band obviously loved it, but they were probably more along my way of thinking of like, well, we love this whole record, like they're all singles. And but I would play that for my friends who were in the industry, and I would just watch their faces, and there was definitely something different about that song. And obviously, a guy from pop radio heard it and started playing it, and all of a sudden we weren't a rock band anymore. We were a pop band. And little did we know, we were helping to create a whole freaking genre of music that that really hadn't existed before. And here it is, kind of thing. So, yeah, I mean, it was a very fun song to write, and just, I'm glad that it's in the world. It's I think it makes a lot of people happy.
Yeah, it does. And I mean, that whole album, Drunk Enough to Dance, and of course A Hangover You Don't Deserve. I mean, what a way to follow up such a successful album, Drunk Enough to Dance, like with, I mean, maybe an even better album, definitely like
right,
definitely like another really incredible record. Like that's quite rare, isn't it, as well, when someone has like a big smash. Usually the follow-up is like a big challenge. Were you guys conscious of that, or were you just having an absolute blast?
Well, it's funny because our first major label record was Let's Do It for Johnny, and the Bitch song had done so well in the UK that to us, Drunk Enough to Dance was kind of our sophomore record, and that's what they say is the sophomore slump, and we got nominated for a Grammy and like all of the stuff. So we didn't have that pressure. We were like, okay, well, our second one was bigger. Let's just go make a bigger one, And quite frankly, I mean, I agree with you. The songs are better, but I also understand why. I think Hangover You Don't Deserve is a better album. There's obviously better singles on it. Almost is a just could go for days, and it's a great album. I understand why Drunk Enough to Dance is the fan album, because that one is so just organic and simple, and just like straight up two guitars and bass and drums with a little bit of sprinkle here and there, and pretty raw vocal, going through this whole this thing, and it's like each song goes to the next one so seamless. And the time that came out, 2002, again, so early in the, early-ish in the pop punk thing. I get it. I understand. Sometimes I'll put that record on, not a lot, but sometimes. And it reminds me, I'm just like, oh, okay. I know this makes sense why everybody likes this one the best. You know? But the great thing about being around 27 years and having over 20 albums is, now you've got people who are like, well, Lunch Drunk Love is my favorite album, or, Drunk Dynasty. And that makes you feel good when you're still producing something that someone can call their favorite, 20 years later. Yeah.
It's because it's important when you have success to keep going. And you mentioned that it was sort of like quite early in that kind of movement. And who would you say are some of your like contemporaries, like bands who you maybe paved the way for or came up around the same time that you respect and like their stuff?
There's a lot of them. I mean, I think there's the obvious ones, that's Green Day, which are so far ahead of all of us, and they don't even like to be put in the pop punk genre, but quite frankly, they just sort of can't help. I mean, they belong there. They do. And then before them, I think the Descendants are the godfathers of the whole genre. Like pretty much if you ask 90% of pop punk bands that are my age or, 10 years younger, we all started with the Descendants, or the Descendants at least had something to do with it. And your listeners, if they don't know them, should go just get summary which is kind of like their first greatest hits, and just listen to that shit and you'll go, oh, okay, this came out in the fucking 80s. Like that makes sense. Like all of these bands stole all their shit from this, you know. But then, you know, and then obviously Blink 182, who, you know, I mean, had a hit in the van and, you know, and really got out there and did it. And then, you know, more of the bands that I feel like are sort of like, you know, where we were, you know, Sum 41, Newfound Glory, us, even Simple Plan, you know, a lot of All American Rejects, another one, got their deal opening up for us when we were still in the van and in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and we were like, see you guys. But that'd be a good selection of, you know, I think Good Charlotte too belongs in the same category. And then there's like Mest and MXPX and, you know, there's a bunch of them, and you know, and I respect the shit out of each and every one of them. And I'm lucky to be able to call pretty much everybody I said, you know, friends. And then you've got, you know, the you know, like All Time Low that are like just killing, you know, still, you know, and they've been doing it for a long time. And so yeah, there's a bunch of bands out there that keep flying the flag, and I think it's all great for the genre. I mean,
yeah, and the genre is, you know, more alive and well than ever. You mentioned earlier in the podcast, and this is actually something that David Crosby said when he came on the podcast, and I kind of agree in the sense of it might sound like very depressing, but you know, when there's the sort of question, oh, how do I become a musician, and you know, what's the best advice you've got, and it's sort of like, don't. Well, yeah. I mean, I actually kind of, you know, maybe there's a lot of truth to that, in the sense of it is quite difficult to make money in the music industry these days. But, you know, what is your view of how things have changed? I mean, you did also say that there are more ways of doing it. So are you kind of optimistic about the future with, you know, coming out of coronavirus? And is there any, like, do you listen to new stuff at all?
I do listen to new stuff. I try to listen to, you know, I just did a thing on Instagram where if you followed me, I'd follow you if you were a band. And so that's going to take me a lot of people took me up on it. That's going to be
a lot of work.
It's a lot. So I am going to go through there and listen to them all. It's going to take me probably a year. You know, I mean, it's so many, but yeah, I do. And I try to stay in touch with what's going on. And I try to stay active in like Facebook groups and things like that, and chime in every once in a while and, you know, stay relevant and, you know, on people's minds. You know, a couple of things, you know, from your question, you know, there's the whole, you know, you want to be a musician, don't. That comes from a place that really isn't always money. You know, you have to understand what the sacrifices are. And again, don't take this as, oh, poor guy, you have a bunch of hits and your wife is really pretty and your kids are awesome. You know what I mean? It's not like that. The sacrifices that you make, you know, when we decided we were going to go for it, there's 4 of us. And then we had a crew guy that just like helped us load in and sold merch and stuff like that. And, you know, it's like, guys, we can't go home for like birthday parties or weddings or funerals and stuff anymore. Like if we all do that, then we're never going to be able to be on the road. So that's all gone, you know, and then you're on the road so much, you know, all of your, you know, your relationships at home, you know, you don't really have the same friends anymore. And then I got a divorce and, you know, had to fight for custody of my kids. And you know, I didn't go to, you know, so many funerals and weddings, like I said earlier. So that sacrifice too, the mental aspect of it all is pretty tough. Now, that being said, you know, when we started and up until, you know, mid 2000s, you know, I would always say, you know, get in the van and go. I don't really think that that's the key anymore, because like I said, the world is small. Social media is really the new touring. You know, so now when a band says, man, we just want to get in the van and go on tour, I'm like, no, you don't, because nobody's going to come see you. Like when in the 80s and 90s, people went to see bands for discovery. They would go to like a club and they'd pay $5 and see 5 bands, and 2 of them they'd like. So they'd get the sticker, you know, and then they'd go see them again. And that's how you got to be popular. That doesn't exist anymore. I don't know one place where that is a thing, where they don't expect you to bring people there instead of people coming there to see you. So the discovery now is social media and being super active and learning the ways of that. It sucks because it's not good enough to just write great songs, you know, but really it never was, you know. I mean, there's always been a lot of work to it. So my advice is don't go into it thinking, you know, I'm just going to be a great songwriter and people are going to catch on to it. It's a 24-hour-a-day job for me still. And I got a bunch of gold records on the wall, you know. But, you know, it's also a very rewarding thing when something does work, you know, as far as, you know, people being able to put smiles on people's faces. It's fucking great, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
and
then
very good advice about
long-winded
the social media thing.
Yeah, long-winded answer, but as far as you like with money, you have to understand, I mean, now you can go online and you can get on Facebook and do a show just for tips and make $50 or something. You can get on, you know, and that you used to have to go to the street corner for that. You know, you can do shows online. You can market your band online. You sell t-shirts online. You know what I mean? Like it's, and then I know that bands complain about the streaming revenue, but you have to understand my band was on Jive Records for 10 years. We sold, I mean, I don't know how many millions of records, but a couple million records, let's say worldwide. We never received a cent from the label, not once, ever. Never made a penny from music until streaming started. So you have to think to yourself, it's not streaming. It's just, that's just the new way to go up. And it's way easier than it is dealing with, you know, all the fucking bureaucracy and shit of labels and stuff. But, you know, last bit of advice, and this is me, and then I'll go, and then I'm sorry, I keep cutting you off, but
no, absolutely not.
Other big thing is, don't think you're going to go spend $10,000 on an EP and make all that back on streaming. Look, that was never a thing. We didn't ever go make an album back in the day and expect to make all that back by just, you know, by playing by just selling music. We had to go play shows. We had to bust our ass. We had to force people to buy them. You know what I mean? It's not any different. You go out and you make it, and then you get people to stream that shit. You autograph the CDs and get people to pay you $20 for them. Whatever it is you got to do, it's the same hustle. It's just different little sort of chess pieces.
Yeah. No, this is definitely the best advice that we've had for aspiring musicians, of which there are a lot who listen to this podcast. So I really appreciate it. Jaret, I'm really sorry to say that I've run out of time due to my having to delay this start, but it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. And you know, it's easy to see from talking to you that you're well attuned to the podcasting world. I know you've got some podcasts of your own. Where can people check them out?
Yeah, actually, you can go to jaretreddick.com and check out all of my stuff. But Jaret Goes to the Movies and Rockstar Dad Show are 2 of my podcasts that are both out and doing very well. I have another one that's launching soon called Jaret and Daniel versus the World. UK listeners will love it because it's basically us talking about America versus the UK on things like entertainment and food and politics, and without getting too political. We have a lot of fun and taking the piss out of one another, so to speak. Awesome. But I'm on all the socials at JARET2113. And dude, I gotta say, Tom, that you are the most patient dude of all time. I had to cancel on you, I think 3 times, and this COVID thing and just the world being what it is.
No problem at all.
This has been a real pleasure, and I hope you'll have me back, man. I would love to come back on.
Absolutely love to have you back on. It's been a real pleasure, and I'm sorry that it hasn't gone on for even longer. And with regards to rescheduling, you know, I occasionally get RC PRs and managements, you know, getting RC when I need to reschedule. So yeah, I would never ever do that, even if someone cancelled like a few times, because it's just like life happens, you know. But thanks so much,
Jaret. What happens to me? I've got Ricky Rocket of Poison coming on, and he's canceled on me twice. So hey, it happens to all of us.
Well, that will be a cool episode. Thanks so much, Jaret. I'll speak to you soon. It would be great to have you back on. And
Thanks,
all
buddy.
the best. Take care.
Bud.
Meet Josh. Josh loves drumming. When he's not practicing, he's performing. And when he's not performing, he's practicing. Oh, and did we mention? Josh loves drumming. And that's why he chooses D-Bud. Hey Josh, show us your skills. Thanks, Josh. Noise harms your health. Josh knows that. He also knows that gigs get very loud. D-Bud's volume slider means that he can slide from minus 11 decibels to minus 24 decibels in the flick of a switch. And that's why Josh loves D-Bud. The problem with cheap earplugs is they often kill both the volume and the sound. The lower tones cut through the earplugs more than the higher ones. The bass overpowers the treble. There's an uneven attenuation of high and low frequencies, an unbalanced distorted sound. Yes, they protect your ears, but you get a muffled and dull sound experience. D-Bud isn't like that. Don't lose your hearing or peace of mind. Get D-Bud today.
If you're enjoying the Greatest Music of All Time podcast, you can keep up to date with all of our latest episodes for free by subscribing. If you're watching on YouTube, the subscribe button is located at the top of the Tom Cridland YouTube page. It's also at the bottom right of any video that you watch on YouTube. If you're listening on an audio platform, such as Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you can subscribe at the top of the page.